going to do a couple of opinion pieces regarding some news regarding Celtic and criticism of the club and the board from various different YouTube channels and internet fan sites, and from several pundits and ex-players, and also start of early part of preview of the weekend fixture against Livingston, which will be our first game back after the Feyenoord match. Before we get going with the video, please like and subscribe, completely free of charge, no obligation to click the subscribe button, to click the like button. Does help boost the channel, does boost my happiness, and does allow the videos to be seen by more people. And also there is a daily fun trivia question in the community section. So, as I'm sure you're all aware, there's been quite a lot of stories on the internet, YouTube channels, and on radio, TV, etc., criticising Celtic, a few ex-players saying that the board should have spent more money, the board has no ambition, etc., etc. I think it's personally, and again, it's a personal opinion, everybody's entitled to an opinion, and every opinion is equally valid. My opinion is, I think it's unfair to blame the board. I think an awful lot modern day transfer negotiations with clubs and with agents and with players is done behind the scenes. I think Celtic had made every effort to bring in a certain level of player over the summer. However, given where Scotland as a league fits into Europe and into the world, given the TV monies that come into Celtic, I think Celtic are able to attract a certain type of player. I think the days of us signing £10 million players from the English Premier League or from the big European leagues is gone. I think we need to probably shop in Scandinavia, Eastern Europe, and within leagues that are around about our same level, such as Belgium, Portugal, and Holland. However, the Dutch league has been given quite a large injection of TV money finances, which I think will help teams such as Feyenoord, Ajax, PSV move further and further away from us in terms of prestige and ability to attract players. Thus, I think Celtic were at a disadvantage at signing players who are known to be Champions League ready now, and we are probably going to have to try to bring in that sort of player from the Far East, such as Maeda, Kyogo and Hatate, all whom came in from Japanese football. At that point, we weren't certain just how good those three were going to be, but they have all turned into good quality players in Europe and internationally. And so if we are going to try and sign Champions League ready players, we're going to have to take a bit of a gamble, bringing in players from lower leagues and less attractive transfer markets or less prestigious transfer markets, and some of them are going to be Champions League ready as soon as we get them. Similarly, we got CCV and Jota on loans. They had been primarily playing occasionally as starters, often away on loan or on the bench at the bigger clubs. Both of them came in and proved that they were Champions League ready. So I think Celtic probably do need to look at being a club that does bring in young players, some of whom are going to be project players. And I do actually personally think that Laga Bielka, Palma, um, Tiago Home, Paulo Bernardo are actually all going to be very good footballers in a year or two's time. We don't quite know how good Luis Palma and Bernardo actually are, given that almost as soon as they were signed, they were off on international duty. It should be remembered that Luis Palma came back in on Friday to training, having been away with Honduras on CONCACAF Nations League duty. Came in on Friday, having had a long flight via London, trained on the Friday, then on the bench on Saturday, bit of training on the Monday, and then off to Feyenoord. So I think players such as Luis Palma and Bernardo are going to take a couple of weeks to fit in with their new teammates, learn the new tactics and formations, etc. And I would expect they're both going to come through over the next couple of months and hopefully contribute significantly in Europe and in Scottish games too. I think we also need to remember that had there not been our injury crisis, that our team against Feyenoord would have had CCV and Navroki in central defence, would have had Abada out on the right, and would have had a fully fit Hattati in midfield. I think that particular team would have challenged Feyenoord better. I think a fully fit Hattati would have been much more creative in midfield. I think a fully fit Abada on the wing would have given them a lot more challenge. And I suspect that neither Navroki or CCV would have been that bit naive like Laga Bielka was when he does put his arm across the Brazilian winger Paixão, who then went down as if he was shot, and the referees and VAR officials bought that as being a penalty, when earlier in the first half they ignored the Maeda foul in the box that should have or could have been a penalty, and similarly when Luis Palma was body checked in the box after Kyogo had blocked the goalkeeper's clearance. Again, VAR and the referee ignored that as being a potential penalty. However, we need to stop crying over spilt milk. Those decisions are gone. Refereeing decisions tend to be even out over time. Very often VAR isn't overturning decisions, and nearly always just rubber stamps the referee's opinion, particularly in Europe. And so really it's only going to be offsides and line decisions where VAR really does make a contribution. So I think Celtic and the board have done their best. I think they did actively pursue players like Fabian Rieder and Dominik Livakovic. Rieder had said that he had no intention of going anywhere other than Germany, Italy, France, or England, and had no intention of going to a league of a similar level to the Swiss league, and so had ruled out going to Belgium, Holland, and Scotland. I think Celtic did make inquiries via his club and his agent, but were turned down. I think similarly, Livakovic had decided where he was going. He had already actually agreed personal terms 2 or 3 weeks before the clubs agreed the transfer fee and clauses, etc. So again, I fully accept that Celtic did make inquiries and did try to pursue him, but Livakovic and his agent had made their wishes clear. I think that's probably a similar scenario to our pursuit of Quinton Merlin, Matthias Kiesgarden, Daniel Podence, Ryan Fraser, and many other players. Celtic apparently were in very close negotiations with Liverpool regarding signing their goalkeeper Kelleher, but that appears to be on the back burner for now. I do think Celtic will renew their interest in Kiesgarden and Kelleher in the winter transfer window, but that may well be postponed to the next summer transfer window. And I also would not be surprised if Celtic pursue Nat Phillips, whose contract is ending at the end of the season with Liverpool. And I think that was part of the reason why Phillips only came to us on a loan up to January, because in January there will be further negotiations between Celtic and Liverpool, whether Celtic pay a lower fee to get Phillips straight away in January, or whether Phillips signs as a free agent for us in the summer of 2024. I also think that we shouldn't underestimate that it is the job of people like Brendan Rodgers, John Kennedy, Harry Kewell, Gavin Strachan, Stevie Woods, etc., to coach players well and bring them up to Celtic levels and coach out any naivety or mistakes that young players make. And so I was actually a bit disappointed that Rodgers so quickly blamed Lagerbielke and Holm for being young and inexperienced and naive, when really a few weeks of coaching and instructions and advice from experienced good level coaches and managers could have ironed that out. I don't think personally that managers such as Jock Stein, Alex Ferguson, Martin O'Neill, Postecoglou would have allowed players to be that naive going into the match. And so I do think, personally, the board, the players, the coaches, the manager all need to take a degree of responsibility for where Celtic are and where Celtic's going. I fully expect that Rodgers will improve these young players and bring them on. I think it's also significant that he signed a 3-year contract, and think that Celtic is on its way up and up and up. I think a year or so of Rodgers coaching the Holmes and the Lagerbielks and the Bernardos and the Palmas, etc., will make them better and better players. And hopefully the loyalty remains. And I think that's also important, because I do think that the board has spent quite considerably in terms of upgrading the wages of players like McGregor, Kyogo, Maeda, Abada. They're very actively trying to improve the contract of Hatate on O'Reilly. And when we signed Jota and CCV last summer on a full contract, their salaries, their wages got massively upgraded from the levels that they had been on at their parent clubs, who loaned them to us the year before. So I think we need to be, as Celtic fans, aware of where we are in the world in terms of prestige and what sort of player we can attract. What we need to do is coach players up to make them Champions League ready, and also hope to scout players from other markets who come in and are trying to get Champions League ready right from the start. Anyway, just my opinion. Perfectly happy to hear other opinions, perfectly happy to accept other opinions, and I think there is more than one correct opinion to these things. And I do actually have a lot of hope that with the full level of support for our 3 home Champions League matches, that we can take 7 points out of those 3 matches, which should get us up into third, if not second place within the group. I still think there is a lot of hope with these players as they bed down over the next few weeks and as Rodgers, Kennedy, etc., improve things for them and make them better organised at free kicks and corners to avoid the mistakes of where Joe Hart was lined up and the wall, which was pretty much useless for Calvin Steng's free kick. In addition to my comments yesterday regarding Nemanja Jovic, the free agent player recently released, or whose contract ended recently at Partizan Belgrade, I will pop a couple of links to highlight videos available via YouTube for Jovic for you to have a look at if you care to. I would just reiterate my opinion. I don't think signing Jovic is a goer, in that we already have quite a number of young players in those positions for development. We already have established players like Maeda and Abada, although Abada is injured at this time for those positions, and we also have very experienced backup in James Forrest for the wide roles as well. So I don't personally feel that committing money to Jovic is an option at this stage. However, do have a look at his highlight videos, and if you feel that he is a player for us to go for, please pop that into the comment section. Finally, our next game is against Livingston at the weekend, live on TV. I'm fully sure Celtic will get back to winning ways at the weekend. I think at the benefit of a few more days of training with the team for players such as Phillips and Palma and Bernardo, a few more days of Phillips and Lagerbielke and Scales building up relationships and understandings with Johnston and Taylor and Hart, etc., will do them the power of good. I think players such as Hatate has a point to prove. I think he probably was a little bit underfit and undercooked for a full Champions League match, but do think a few more days in training and he'll be fine for playing against Livingston. There is the difficulty of playing on artificial pitches, which has been a problem for Celtic in the past, and I think was a factor in our loss in the Viaplay Cup to Kilmarnock. And players such as Jota and CCV previously were said to have a lot of difficulty playing on artificial pitches due to their knees. I think, however, Celtic now have a lot of experience on playing on those sorts of pitches. I think they can adapt the way they're going to play and line up against Livingston, and I fully expect a comfortable 2 or 3 goal victory at the weekend to keep us top of the table and ahead of our various different rivals. And then a few more games building up to our next Champions League match against Lazio. One other wee interesting thing I picked up going through various different sites over the last few hours is that, as we know, Celtic declared profits of just over £40 million. However, according to other figures, Celtic are still owing other teams £50 million in terms of things like transfer instalments and clauses, such as Benfica's share of the sell-on fee for Jota and a few similar other clauses in player and other clubs' contracts with Celtic. And so I think there is a balancing act going on at Celtic. to keep us financially sensible and financially viable. I think personally the last thing we want to do is to go bust, like our big rivals did. And I'm also old enough to remember the dire straits financially Celtic were in um, back in the 80s and 90s. Um, but we were able to come out of that, rebuild Celtic Park, increase the capacity, make it a much higher level stadium, and put ourselves on a stable financial footing. And I think it is important that the club does manage itself well within the financially, to keep itself stable and to keep itself viable, and keep itself attractive for advertising, for fans, for TV, etc., etc. And so I do think it's a bit of a balancing act between the board, the finance people, and the footballing people. So hopefully you found some of these opinions interesting. If not, or if you've got other opinions, pop those in the comment section. So just to finish off, please like and subscribe. Please do click the subscribe button, boost me up the rankings. Do have a wee go at the Celtic Livingston themed trivia question. And for today, thanks for listening, thanks for watching, goodbye, and hail, hail.